The wide receiver position is more talented than it's ever been. Going into 2024, there are superstars everywhere, premier talent at the most important position outside of quarterback in football. But who is the best? What separates the good from the great from the special? Today, we're going to be going over our top 5 wide receivers for the 2024 season with a few honorable mentions. Starting things off with those, I've got DJ Moore as one of mine. Very talented player, great deep ball catcher. It's hard to get a good read on Moore because Justin Jefferson really only targeted him, it felt like, last season. And clearly with Keenan Allen and Roman Dunze, his production's going to go down. Still a great player, but his numbers a little bit inflated last season. I've also got Jamar Chase. Don't need to go into too much depth. We all know how good he is. Him being outside of my top 5 may shock some people. It's nothing against him. I just think there are 5 guys better.
Well, I don't think Justin Jefferson's a Bears quarterback.
Justin Fields, excuse me.
Some of my honorable mention, I think it goes to say for any of the receivers we're talking about today, they're all elite number 1 guys. The margin between some of them is razor thin, and they may have slightly different skill sets that allow them to affect the game in different ways. Honorable mention number 1 for me, Mike Evans, one of the best receivers in the NFL for a long time, 10 years of dominance, 1K after 1K. The only reason I don't have him in my top 5, I tried to talk myself into it. He's not quite as dominant of a route runner as some of these other guys. He doesn't affect the game on all levels as some of these other guys, so that's why I have him outside of my top 5. And another honorable mention, Davante Adams has been the best receiver in the NFL for a number of years now. Kind of took a step back last year, although that can largely be chalked up to due to having Aiden O'Connell, Brian Hoyer for a game, and Jimmy Garoppolo as his running back. Just last year, had 1,400 yards.
I think Jimmy Garoppolo plays quarterback, actually.
I'm pretty sure it's whatever.
Roll the
tape. Was great last year, took a slight step back due to poor quarterback play, but he is getting a little older. He's losing a slight step athletically, so that's why I have him just outside of my top 5. Almost put him in my top 5, but due to the slight setback, I did not.
Yeah, I feel so bad for Davante Adams. Who could have possibly told him that going to Oakland might not be a good move for his career? It's not like that's the NFL's retirement home or anything. I guess Tennessee's the new retirement home, but kind of did that to himself. Anyway, getting into the actual top 5, and I think it's very important to make this clear. This is going for next season. This is not some career achievement. This is not about last season. This is for next season. With that being said, number 5, Tyreek Hill. Don't you click away. This is not clickbait. This is not me trying to outrage farm. I've got a reason behind this. Obviously, we saw how good he was last season. The first 6 games, best receiver in football by a wide margin. Best first 6 games we have ever seen at the wide receiver position. Throughout the year, regressed a little bit. Particularly after an ankle injury in December, sidelined him against the Jets. I don't think he was as fast the following few weeks. I don't think he looked as good. He's now on the wrong side of 30. He is still a great route runner. He's still going to be blazingly fast, one of, if not the fastest guys in the NFL. Still got phenomenal hands, can win contested balls. But the combination of him just getting a little bit older and Jalen Waddle taking a bigger role in the Dolphins offense, I think his production's going down. I think he's not going to be as impactful. And I think Tyreek Hill in particular, you see guys like Terrell Owens, Julio Jones, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice play well into their 30s and keep up the elite production. I look at Tyreek Hill like I look at a sprinter, and sprinters start to physically diminish drastically once they hit their 30s. You don't see guys in their mid to late 30s running the very fast times in the world, except for Usain Bolt, and he's the exception. So I think we see a physical decline from Tyreek Hill going into this season, and it puts him all the way down at 5. Still one of the 5 best players in football at his position. It's not some insult to him. I just think there are going to be 4 guys better than him.
People have been counting on Tyreek Hill's decline since he left the Chiefs, and when he joined the Dolphins, he had the best statistical productions of his career. He's really shown no sign over the course of a season with the Dolphins and Tua as his quarterback that he's going to have less than 1,500 yards. So I think his placement at 5 is laughable. I'll expand upon my opinion on Tyreek Hill a little bit later since I have him higher on my list. But at number 5 for me, the 5th best receiver in the NFL is A.J. Brown. He is one of the He is, in my opinion, the most physically dominant receiver in the NFL. The way he bullies corners, uses his size at the catch point, his run after the catch, how hard it is to tackle him is unmatched among receivers in the NFL. And when you put back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons, 11 touchdowns, last year, 7 touchdowns the year previous. You're one of the best guys to do it. He comes in at number 5 for me. The reason I don't have him higher on my list is I don't think he's as high a level route runner as a Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, let's say. In the Eagles offense, he does play with one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. He has Devonta Smith across the field from him. He is a high-level quarterback. That certainly helps his offensive production. And I think people kind of that are detract from him underestimate just how good he is.
Oh, they underestimate how good he is. Here's the thing. He might not be the best receiver on his own team next year. That's more so Devonta Smith's ascension, gotten yet better year by year by year. But I get why you want to have him at 5, very physically dominant, aesthetically pleasing after the catch. There are guys I'd rather have the ball in their hands, who I'm going to talk about later on this list, better guys after the catch, but I got no real issue with A.J. Brown at 5. And at number 4, I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown has gotten the same treatment as Cooper Kupp did a few years ago. A vast majority of his production comes in the slot. Therefore, people like to discount it. Oh, it doesn't matter. He's a slot merchant. He just runs drag in routes, yada, yada, yada. I have never once cared about where a receiver lines up. I care about what a receiver does with the ball in his hands and what he does to get it there. And very few people are better at getting the ball and doing things with it than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Top 3, top 2 route runner, phenomenal hands, amazing after the catch. The one thing you can take away from him is he can't go out and win jump balls on the sideline like a DK Metcalf or somebody like that. But still, production is production. Amon-Ra is elite. People who are going to try and knock him down a peg because how he gets his numbers are silly to me. He is going to have 1,500 plus yards next year. With the absence of Josh Reynolds in that Lions offense, he's just going to see more targets. And being a slot receiver should not preclude you from being one of the best in the NFL. In fact, we are both going to talk about guys later on this list who will line up in the slot and give you elite production.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is a phenomenal receiver. And I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we are splitting hairs with some of these guys. Every single one of these guys, any team would love to have on their roster, and they're capable of leading one of the best offenses in the NFL. I mean, when you have 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, lead an offense that was top 3 in the NFL last season, you're a great receiver. The only reason he came in as an honorable mention for me instead of in the top 5 is I don't think he's quite as explosive as a Jamar Chase, as a CeeDee Lamb. He's not quite as athletically explosive. He's not quite as elite at the catch point in jump ball situations. And those guys can do a lot of the same things he does in their respective offenses. So that's...
I completely agree with you on the point you made to detract from. I'd also note those other guys you just named are not as good at manipulating zone defenses as Amon-Ra St. Brown, though. He finds a soft spot. He moves linebackers and safeties off him. He gets himself and other people open. His skill set is hard to quantify, or is not as easy to quantify watching him as someone like Justin Jefferson who's going to go up and make a one-handed catch in triple coverage. But what he does better than anyone else. I don't understand how you have him as an honorable mention. To me, he was clearly top 5. I could have seen myself moving him up a spot or 2 even.
Well, I'll just speak to Jamar Chase, who you have as an honorable mention. I have him as the 4th best receiver in the NFL, and I tinkered around with the idea of him being an honorable mention or being the 5th receiver on my list. But at the end of the day, when Jamar Chase is healthy, he is a threat to score from any part of the field. His speed is among the best at the receiver position in the NFL. His route running is very good. The way he's able to create separation against man coverage. His size, the way he's able to take advantage of some smaller corners, DBs, at the catch point. I mean, yes, he took a step back last year, was not quite as good as his rookie season, even the year prior, but he's dealt with some injuries. And
he's dealt with Jake Browning.
Backup quarterback last year, so an injury-plagued season, and then a season where there was a backup quarterback in play. The Bengals' offensive line wasn't all that great last year to kind of compound that, but I think his skill set of being a great route runner, the ability with his speed to score from any part of the field, I'd rather have that, and I prefer that over Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I think Jamar Chase is an interesting case where it's hard to separate him from the offense he plays in, because in his professional career and even in his college career when he was doing his best work, he has never been without Joe Burrow. And having a top 3 passer of the football greatly benefits you. I think Joe Burrow, of the quarterbacks we are going to name on this list, is the best thrower of the football. I know we're not naming quarterbacks, but you match up Tyreek Hill as Tua, Jefferson had Kirk, CeeDee Lamb's got Dak, those type of players. he stands far and away with a clear elite top-of-the-line passer of the football. He has the O-line issues you mentioned, maybe less time to get open deep, but I have trouble separating where Ja'Marr Chase is from who he is as the player. I can do that a lot better with the other guys on this list. We've seen them in a broader range of situations.
It depends also how much you value the skill set and where they fit in their offense versus also the statistical production, because some people may not, or they may speak down on Ja'Marr Chase a little bit due to the lack of statistical production in comparison to some of the other high-end guys.
I mean, I just put Tyreek Hill at 5, so I think you can figure out what I feel about statistical production being the only deciding factor.
Well, there is an element to Amon-Ra St. Brown's success. He is the person the offense is built around, that it is catered to. It is him in the receiving portion of the game. Then they have two very good running backs built off of that. So they have a high-powered rushing attack with a slot receiver who gets open against zone coverage, gets open against any coverage, but they don't have another receiver that's truly competing with him for targets. So I think that's where an element of his success comes into play.
Well, if you want to play that game, then we can also look at Ja'Marr Chase having two elite receivers, maybe not elite, but two very good receivers next to him for his entire career, and what that means cornerbacks, namely and safeties, can do to cover him. They can't really double him as much. It's splitting hairs. You've got Amon-Ra at 6 or 7. I got Ja'Marr Chase at 6 or 7. Let's move on. This might be the only pick we agree on. Number 3, CeeDee Lamb. And CeeDee Lamb is probably the best player after the catch in football. Great route runner, physical freak, insanely fast, amazing vertical, could probably dunk a basketball on an 11-foot hoop. Special athlete. Playing with Dak Prescott, is the featured weapon in an elite offense and is in a contract year now. The production is definitely going to be there. His ability to get open against man, against zone, against physically dominant cornerbacks who can press most receivers into the dirt compared to guys who are just relying on their speed and sticky, doesn't matter. You cannot effectively cover CeeDee Lamb in most cases. I don't think we're going to need to have a long soliloquy about how great he is. Everyone knows how good CeeDee Lamb is. He is in your top 3. He's in my top 3. He's in your top 3 at home unless you're an Eagles, Giants, or Skins fan.
Well, you just mentioned in regards to Ja'Marr Chase having very good receivers playing next to him, offensive weapons playing next to him, and what that may do for his ability to get open. Not as much double coverage, not as much safeties over the top. With the Cowboys, you know who's getting the ball over the last 2 seasons, and that is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I think it was Noah Brown was the second leading receiver.
Jake Ferguson, maybe.
2 seasons ago. This past season, it was Jake Ferguson.
Brandon Cooks is his lead second wide receiver there.
Brandon Cooks after him. You know who the Cowboys want to get the ball to. You know who Dak Prescott is trying to make a play with. And last year has 1,749 yards, 12 touchdowns. Year prior, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's getting better every single year. When you compare him to Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, who have lit up the stat sheets over the past 2 seasons, he has more catches and more touchdowns than Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson. Statistically, he's up there with the best of them. The only reason I don't quite have him as at 1 or 2 is I don't think he's quite as electric as Tyreek Hill. At this point, we know Justin Jefferson is going to... I didn't leave him off of my top 5. I don't think he's quite that electric.
Coward.
I didn't want to start a complete fist fight with Isaiah over there on that side of the table, but he doesn't have the same yards per game. He doesn't have the same yards per catch or yards after catch as those 2 guys. So that's why I have him at 3 versus 1 or 2.
I was ready for the Justin Jefferson disrespect. I'm a little bit disappointed I don't get to use this today, but whatever. At number 2, some people don't have me as an honorable mentioner in their top 10. I got Puka Nacua. And Puka Nacua, this is the most bit of projection and the most reliant on where they are to me of any of the players I'm going to name today. Because he broke every rookie receiving record. Phenomenal last season. Amazing at every aspect of the game. The athleticism, he's got game speed. The 40 doesn't show it. The testing doesn't show it. He is fast and quick on the football field. His route running, high level. He can move into the slot and beat you. He can go out on the edge and beat you. And there's this trend on teams Matthew Stafford plays for, where there's just one guy. It's been Calvin Johnson. Recently, it was Cooper Kupp. As a rookie, Puka Nacua usurped Cooper Kupp and became the guy for Matthew Stafford. Even when Kupp came back and got back into the swing of the offense, down the stretch, Nacua was getting more targets than him. He was getting force-fed the ball at a higher rate. He had 180 yards in a playoff game last year. He breaks opposing defenses. He can do it in any aspect of the game. I think his targets are going to go up next season. I think his physicality is going to go up next season. I think you're going to see him, as opposed to running out of bounds like he would sometimes do, instead invite the contact, look for a truck, look for a juke, pick up extra yards that way. I think we are going to see him potentially break receptions records. I think we're going to see him be a real threat in the red zone, which he was last year. And I think we are going to see a sophomore breakout, not even really a breakout, but a sophomore performance from Puka Nacua, which will have him as the darling of fantasy owners and as one of the great late round pickups in NFL history. I think Puka Nacua is going to have an amazing 2024 season. I think he is going to be up there with the very best of them and may even surpass most, if not all of them.
His rookie season is the most impressive rookie season from a receiver I think we have ever seen. Given the context that he was a 5th round pick, no one was really expecting the Rams to be all that great. The number one option in the Rams offense goes down with a hamstring injury early in the season.
In training camp, actually, did not start the season.
And with the Rams, he anchored the 7th most productive offense in the NFL when it comes to total yards per game. That is impressive from any way you want to slice it. The way he's able to manipulate defenses, he knows how to beat man coverage, he knows how to settle in zones. He had an incredible connection with Matthew Stafford as a young rookie. We don't see that all too often. It often takes rookies some time, a few weeks into the season, to develop that type of connection. And it only got better as the year goes on. The only reason I have him as an honorable mention is I'm not willing to say he's a top 5 receiver in the NFL when we don't know what he's going to be next season with a much healthier Cooper Kupp heading into the year. I think he did have that hamstring injury and he did come back healthy, but who knows how healthy he actually was and how much the Rams wanted him to be the number one option when Puka Nacua showed that he could clearly be that guy, and they didn't need to give all those targets to Cooper Kupp.
I mean, do you really think they want to stack a ton of targets on top of Cooper Kupp now that he's 31 years old, going to be 32 during the season, I believe? Do you really think that's what they want to do? Like, Kupp has his uses. He's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver if he stays healthy. He is probably the best slot receiver outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown in the NFL. They're going to get him his touches, but besides Kupp, who else is going to take away targets on that offense? Do you think they're suddenly going to develop a stout rushing attack with Blake Corum and a non-existent interior offensive line? They're going to be throwing the ball a ton. Now, if you think Stafford gets hurt because he's an old man, that's one thing. That would knock Nacua certainly out of my top 3 and maybe even off my list because it's such a special situation between him and Nacua. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can look at what he did last season and say he's not a top 5 guy as a rookie.
And I can see and agree with a lot of things you said. I just think heading into this season with the defenses have another full year. DBs have a full year of looking at Puka Nacua film, seeing how the Rams use him. That certainly is going to affect his production somewhat. And I'm just not comfortable projecting a rookie as a top 5 receiver.
Well, good thing he's a second-year player.
2.
Anyway, who's your number 2?
Well, number 2, I am kind of going to be addressing number 2 and number 1 together. And I know I'm going to make Isaiah upset with this one. I'm going to make Minnesota Vikings fans upset with this one. Fans of the gritty. I have Justin Jefferson as the number 2 receiver in the NFL. And yes, he has been great. He had an incredible 2022-2023 season hampered by injury. He's a high-level route runner, potentially the best route runner in the NFL. He's some of the best hands in the NFL, and he has elite speed. The only reason I have him as the number 2 receiver in the NFL versus the number 1 receiver in the NFL is that Tyreek Hill has that juice, and he is also an elite route runner with very good hands, and they both are high IQ players. And then...
Okay, let's not talk about Tyreek Hill's IQ. If you've been paying attention to his
football
Twitter.
IQ.
Okay, there you go. You got to preface the football IQ.
IQ on the field. This is a football video. Clearly we're talking
We have
about
strayed
IQ on the
into
field.
different topics in the past. He's got like a 120 football IQ and an 80 regular IQ. It balances out to an even 100.
His ability to be used in different formations affect the defense. He's a major reason why defenses started to go to 2 high safeties. And people, I think, kind of underrate his route running ability. They underrate his hands just because of how electric he is as an athlete on the field. And when you boil it down to production, he has more yards, more touchdowns, more catches than Justin Jefferson over the previous 2 seasons. And then, of course, I know you're going to throw out there, oh, Justin Jefferson missed, 7 games last season, went down in the, second quarter of the Chiefs game. On a per game basis, or on a per reception basis, they basically have the same yards per reception. They basically have the same yards per game. I believe it's 106.6 and 106.3. I think 106 point. No, I don't think anyone cares about 0.3 yards. And then when it comes down to the Offensive Player of the Year award that Justin Jefferson won, 99 yards less for Tyreek Hill, 1 touchdown less. I think it was 9 catches less, and Tyreek Hill had 14 less targets. So, basically the same season. If he had as many targets as Justin Jefferson did,
not basically the same season. 100 yards and a touchdown is basically another game's performance ahead of Tyreek Hill. Not the same
on 14
season.
less targets.
Okay, it's a route thing. Like, do you think Tyreek Hill's going to get targeted as much as Justin Jefferson with his play style, with his attack strategy of going deep? I know he's a good route runner. I am very aware. I mentioned it already, but at the end of the day, his routes are going to be hitting much deeper than Justin Jefferson's, meaning he's going to get a lot less targets and a lot less receptions. It's just part of the territory which Tyreek Hill lives in, playing the way he does, being the athletic freak that he does. Like, is that some knock on Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill? I don't get why you're bringing it up. They're different styles of receiver.
I'm basically just pointing out that when it comes down to production, their production is identical on a per game basis, on a yards basis, on a touchdown basis. Old Tyreek Hill does get in the end zone more than Justin Jefferson does, and they affect the game in different ways. That is true, what you just said, but I'd rather have the guy who's the fastest player in the NFL. Defenses simply can't cover him, and I think he's the most electric playmaker and the best receiver in the NFL.
See, I know what this really is. This is trying to do some projection, making the fast guys seem like the skilled players so you can justify having Malik Neighbors in your top 5 when we do this video next year because he's a fast receiver. I know what you are. Let's start with the 2022 season. If you don't think Justin Jefferson was better, impacted the game more, had more game-changing moments than Tyreek Hill in 2022, you are out of your mind. You are delusional if you don't think Jefferson was better in 2022. In
Certainly
2023,
didn't help him in the playoffs that year.
Yeah, tell me what Tyreek Hill did in the playoffs that year.
More than what Justin Jefferson did.
You sure about that, Tex?
7 catches for 47 yards versus 7 catches for 69 yards.
I'm sorry, what was the end result?
They both lost.
Exactly. So, you want to add those yards on top of each other, trying to make the Tyreek Hill stats look better? At the end of the day, if you want to knock Jefferson for getting injured and missing games, fine. That's
I didn't knock
valid.
him for that.
He was better than Tyreek Hill the last full season they were healthy. To start the year, I think Tyreek Hill was better than Jefferson. Had an amazing first 6 games. Jefferson was not far behind him before he went down with injury. He was playing phenomenally. Both those guys could conceivably have hit 2,000 yards at the wide receiver position if they kept up their pace. When Jefferson came back, he was limited against the Raiders. And then he averaged, I believe, 130 yards over the next 4 games with Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs throwing him the football. We talk about situations. We talk about guys like Jamar Chase, Dak Prescott, Tyreek Hill having 2023, having a good supporting
he averaged
cast
100
around
yards
him.
over his last 5 games.
His first game back was getting back into speed. He had 29 yards, I think, against the Raiders. That Vikings offense scored 3 points that game. His final 4 games averaged around 130 yards with terrible quarterback play. Justin Jefferson can succeed in any situation. He can succeed against any defensive scheme. He can dominate anyone man to man, and Tyreek Hill was hitting the tail end of his prime last season. This is the last gasp. We've seen it. We are going to see the production dip in 2024 from him. If Jefferson stays healthy, there's an argument to be made he has not hit his prime yet. He will be the first receiver to get 2,000 yards if they can put a halfway functional quarterback in that Vikings offense. Say what you want about Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. Fingers crossed that one of them winds up being not a stick. But it's clearly Justin Jefferson. There's just so many things. He's got better hands. He's a better route runner. He is arguably better after the catch. I know the speed thing for Tyreek Hill.
After the catch.
Appealing.
I don't know about that one.
The speed thing for Tyreek Hill is very appealing. The after the catch happens and there's absolutely no one in front of him. Justin Jefferson has to make people miss when he catches the ball over the middle. Tyreek Hill doesn't. Tyreek Hill has to go
So he's
straight.
so fast that he doesn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, I'm not taking anything away from Tyreek Hill's speed. The reason I have him at 5 is because he's going to start losing that speed sooner or later, because that's the entire thing his game's built on. Like, when Justin Jefferson gets older, age is like a fine wine. His route running will improve. His hands will be at the same level of speed. Not there as much. Once Tyreek Hill's speed goes, he's not in the top 10 anymore. The question is, when does that happen? I'm saying it starts happening.
So it's happening this year.
It's happening this year. Are you going to go defend Tyreek Hill? So, actually, he's going to do great things. A great man.
What does that have to do with his health and injury or decline? I mean, he's missed one game over the last 2 seasons. If you want to go ahead and project a player to have injuries and decline,
I'm not projecting him to have injury. I'm projecting him to decline because he's getting old and his entire game is built around being fast.
See,
and people get slower when they get older.
This is what I'm talking about. You're underrating his intelligence on the football field, his ability as a route runner, and I don't think that's quite going to happen. He's only 30. It's not like he's 32 or 33 heading into one of those
sprinters have a
seasons.
different timeline than football players, though. They start aging out of the relevant.
He's not a sprinter. He's an NFL player.
He's 0.1 seconds faster than everyone else when running in a straight line these days. Once that 0.1's gone, suddenly he comes back down to earth.
He's a bum. He's out of the top 10.
He's at number 5. What more do you want from me? Do you want to say, oh, actually, he's going to keep getting better. He's going to run a 4.0 40 the next time we test it out. He is going to just keep getting faster and faster until he breaks the sound barrier and the NFL is canceled because every team which has Tyreek Hill automatically wins. Give me Justin Jefferson in Atlanta. Flip Tyreek Hill with Jamar Chase is my honorable mention. Jamar Chase is now 5. Tyreek Hill's at 6.
Oh, okay.
Get that bum out. Justin Jefferson, best receiver in football. You can do the outro this week. I'm sick of you.
That has been our top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. Let us know what your top 5 is looking like. Do you have Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill? Is Tyreek Hill in your top 5? He doesn't even have Tyreek Hill in his top 5. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you in the next one.